The trade winds are blowing in the NHL, and it's only a matter of time before the Leafs make their next move. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, the daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano. Dave Morisuti overseas in Italia. It was a travel day for him, so timing didn't quite match up for us to do the show together, but it's all good. Dave sent me some notes because, man, oh man, it was a busy, busy day in the NHL yesterday to react to everything that went down and put a little Leaf spin on it because I think that there are some Leaf tentacles, some definitely they were impacted positively and negatively. So we'll get into that on today's show with just a few days left until the NHL draft. Today's episode, by the way, brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. So yesterday was a crazy day in the NHL. I mean, it was, it's funny because usually the NHL gets decimated by the other major four sports with, a bunch of trade news, whether it's, during the draft or during free agency or during trade center. Usually, they get, they end up being second class in the news cycle. Not yesterday. It was NBA draft day, but it was the NHL making all the big moves and big splashes for big trades. And I mean pretty sizable deals made in the NHL yesterday. 5 first-round picks dealt within those trades, including 2 picks traded in the top 10 of this year's draft. It was the first time that we've seen a top 5 pick knowingly traded. That's a keyword, knowingly traded within the top 5. The first time since 2008. And that was actually back when the Maple Leafs traded up from 7 to 5 with the Islanders, and they end up taking Luke Shen in 2008. Sorry, so that was the last time that we'd seen a top 5 pick knowingly get dealt in the NHL draft, and there could be more. Like there very well could be some more movement here in the next couple of days leading up to the draft. It really feels like teams are realizing that if they're going to win now, the only way to get better is to be trading, right? The free agent class is so weak. It's forcing teams to trade for talent to improve their team, which is obviously creating a seller's market. So any teams out there who are selling off pieces, and it's not even that it's fully rebuilding teams. Like you've got some good teams sending out some good players, like the Buffalo Sabres. That deal last night, sending out Bowen Byram, that's a team that's taking the next step, but he wasn't going to re-sign there. It sounded like they weren't necessarily, thinking about a long-term partnership, so they're able to get a massive haul out of Chicago for him, getting the 4th overall pick, the 45th overall pick, and then another defenseman who they could plug in their bottom pair. Really good trade for them. The San Jose Sharks in a similar situation. They're hoping to take that next step. They trade away William Eklund, one of their up-and-coming young pieces who they thought they could, stick next to Celebrini for years to come as a top 6 fixture in San Jose. Well, Ottawa came knocking, and they used that number 9 overall pick they got back for Brady Tkachuk and said, hey, we'll shop this over to you for that William Eklund fella. And all of a sudden now William Eklund is an Ottawa Senator, and Jordan Kyrou goes to Washington for McMichael in a first-round pick. Just some big trades. Simon Nemec, the last of the big 4, going from New Jersey, who's another one of those good teams, have a good player who's, approaching his prime. Traded him to Calgary for 2 firsts and a second-round pick for a big young right shot defenseman who's controllable with a few more years left of controllability and RFA status. So it wasn't just, those UFAs. It wasn't just the old typical trading, for draft or trading for free agent rights, the rights to negotiate with players. That's typically what we see around this time of year. We're seeing some real good hockey trades, and it's been exciting. It's created a lot of buzz leading into the NHL draft in a couple of days, where the Maple Leafs do have the number 1 overall selection. The Leafs have made a couple of deals, obviously, in the last week as well. They made that Joseph Woll trade last week with Philadelphia, and then a couple days later pull off a deal to bring in Darren Radish on a sign and trade. So they've been active as well, and it seems like they're going to continue to be active. We'll chat about some of the names that are being thrown around in a little bit. Sounds like Brandon Carlo, Jake McCabe, Morgan Riley obviously continues to be a player who's gaining, some interest that the Maple Leafs are trying to move off of. And sounds like there are some teams willing to take that on. Just got to figure out the right number of retention and all that. But it seems like the trade route is the way to go this year, where teams are looking to that as opposed to free agency when it comes to improving their roster and making their team better. And it's creating a real bleep storm ahead of the draft, which is a lot of fun. Something that the NHL has promised us for years. It seems like for years, every insider says, yeah, it feels like it's going to be a crazy offseason. And then it's a bit of a dud, right? It seems like the draft, there could be a lot of movement this year in the draft with teams looking to move up, matching up with teams looking to move down. And it never happens. You never get picks traded within the top 10. It's usually, late 20s picks, just, trading picks for picks. And it's not all that entertaining. This has been a big, big week for the NHL in terms of entertainment value and getting all over SportsCenter and Sportsnet and ESPN with some headline news. So this is what the NHL wants. This is great for the league. And, it's good for content too. It gives us a lot to talk about. We could break down some of these trades in a moment. I think the one that obviously shocked most people was that Bowen Byram trade, where Byram and Greenway go from Buffalo to Chicago for the 4th overall pick, the 45th overall pick, and then a youngish defenseman, Louis Crevier, 6'8", by the way, 6'8", 230, had 7 goals last year. So he's actually a serviceable bottom pairing defenseman. At least he was in Chicago. So now Toronto's going to have to deal with that and deal with that with him in Buffalo now. So we'll see how that works out. But man, that's a haul that the Sabres, who were able to pull through this year, and now they have the 4th overall pick, and they'll have an opportunity to either get themselves another good young defenseman, or maybe they go the forward route if one of those guys fall to 4, or maybe they could use number 4 to trade again and bring in another great player. So it's interesting. It's a deal that I did not expect for the Chicago Blackhawks to make. That seems like a bit of an overpay for me when it comes to Bowen Byram. Like, I get it. He's a good player, a bit of a breakout season, and maybe they're banking on him continuing to break out moving forward. But just seems like the 4th overall pick could have been suffice, and then they added, their 2nd round pick, 45th overall, and they added an NHL body, a 3rd pairing, young 3rd pair defenseman in Louis Crevier. Just seemed like a lot to give up for Bowen Byram. But best of luck to him. Best of luck to Chicago. They give up. You got to give to get, and there must have been a bidding war of sorts for Bo Byron's services. Again, we talked about the free agent market not being very good. I think the only the best defenseman on the market right now is Rasmus Andersson. Then after that, you're looking at 38-year-old John Carlson. You're looking at Jacob Trouba, who's long past his prime. Like, those are the best, the top available players, and then you probably get to Morgan Riley at that point. Which is why these trades, that we see, both Bowen Byram and Simon Nemec, them getting dealt, is good for Toronto, because those are, teams that are those are players that were in the market that are now off the board. And it just kind of moves Riley up on some trade target lists around the league, I would imagine. Let's take a break. Let's come back. Let's talk about what these trades do mean for Toronto, because it's not just what it means, for Morgan Riley. There's some Matthew Nyes tentacles to this, Brandon Carlo, Jake McCabe. It's all intertwining. So we'll get into that news next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. The World Cup is here, and it's the most electric time in soccer. On Kalshi, you can trade every single match and the championship game. The World Cup match tonight, you're looking at Switzerland trading at 40% to beat Canada, meaning a $100 trade pays out $239.92 if they win. As the World Cup heats up, those numbers move in real time, and you can buy in or out at any time. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning There's no house, and there's the probability will change. And you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade. KALSHI, Kalshi, trade on anything. Today's episode is also brought to you by Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone work toward the same goal, and that's true in sports just like it is in business. One thing that really stands out to me about the Carolina Hurricanes, Stanley Cup Hurricanes organization, they got everyone pulling in that same direction. It wasn't just one great player. It wasn't just Rod the Bot as the coach. It was a coordinated effort across the entire organization that made it successful. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DeStefano with you today, going solo dolo, reacting to the big day of trades yesterday and what's still to come over the next couple of days leading up to the NHL draft. By the way, you can find the Locked On Leafs podcast wherever you get your podcast. We got episodes each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, just because the Leaf season is over. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues along. Dave Morisuti, my usual co-host, will be back regularly next week. He's just on vacation at a wedding over across seas in the motherland in Italy. So he's been a little sparse as to when he's been able to join us, but definitely will be able to chat with him a little bit later on for tomorrow's show and get his thoughts on the big day of trades that we saw yesterday and what it means for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Because I think that there's a lot of impact here with these trades when it comes to the Maple Leafs. And I was talking a little bit about in the last segment how with both Byram, Simon Nemec both coming off the board, that does make Morgan Rielly a bit more of an attractive option, I would imagine. Obviously, I'm not in these trade calls. I don't know where people have these guys stacked on their boards, but like Bowen Byram and Simon Nemec definitely would have been above Morgan Rielly in your trade targets list. But how many more guys are really out there? Like, I'm not so sure that teams would have Darnell Nurse, who's making, way more money than Morgan Rielly. I'm not sure they'd have him ahead of Mo on their trade list. You look at the free agent market, it's not overly strong. You've got Rasmus Anderson, John Carlson, and then it gets to really quickly, it falls off. You're getting to, at that point, Jacob Trouba, who is considered one of the top players on the market, specifically, on the defensive side of things. So like those are your top players that you can acquire if you don't go the trade route. And as guys continue to get taken off, and obviously the Leafs bringing in Darren Radish last week took out another one of those big players on the defensive market. That does make Morgan Rielly a little bit more of an attractive piece. Now, I get it. The Leafs are going to have to retain no matter what deal they make. I don't think teams are willing to take on Morgan Rielly after the season he had and what looks like he's on the decline at that full, $8 and a bit million cap hit. I just don't think that it's what they're going to be in the mood for, especially considering there's 4 more years left on this deal. But I do think that there is a team that is going to want to bring him in. Again, like I think that he still can play at the NHL level. It's not that he's completely fallen off. I still think he could be like a number 4. Don't get me wrong. I think he could be a serviceable player on a good team. He's just not a top pair guy. He's not something you want to match up against the opposition's best line and play him 24 minutes a night, which is what he was doing here in Toronto. And that's just basically because the Leafs didn't have anyone better. Like they just simply did not, especially, when the injuries started to pile up and you didn't have Chris Tanev around and, you kind of had to use Rielly in a bit of a matchup role. Didn't work out, obviously. But if he can go to a team and he won't have to play big minutes and won't have to be their top guy, then I think that he could have a bit of a bounce back, a resurgence of sorts. You know, you look at what Shane Gostisbehere was able to do in a lesser role in Carolina. Kind of had a nice resurgence there this season, winning a Stanley Cup. You know, for years, a couple of years, we've talked about the resurgence of Oliver Ekman-Larsson's game, you know, when he ended up in a lesser role, going from being a top pair guy in Arizona and Vancouver, and then all of a sudden he had to be a third pair guy in Florida, and his game went, you know, he got his confidence back because he was playing against lower competition, and this year played a great second pair role for the Maple Leafs, and I think they're hoping for the same next season. So maybe Morgan Rielly, you know, there's teams out there who are willing to take a chance on Rielly in a new scenario, new system, new situation, and in a new role, a lesser role at that, hoping that he can, you know, break through. And let's keep in mind too that price that he's going to cost, like it's not going to be a lot. You know, like there's reports out there at least, you know, most likely just nearly just a cap dump. Like if they can get a mid-round pick, you know, along with it, just to get something out of him, they probably would take it. I don't think you're going to expect a big haul. I don't expect, you know, first round picks like we saw thrown around yesterday. I think it'll be a lesser trade, obviously, just based on how unattractive the contract is. But I still do think that Morgan Rielly, a team will get to a point where their targets, whether, you know, they had a list of 10 guys that they wanted to acquire this offseason to help their blue line. Darren Rash would probably have been on those lists. Simon Nemec would have been on those lists. Bo Byram would be on those lists. They're now all crossed off, which moves him up a little bit. So I do think that these trades yesterday definitely positively impact the probability of a team willing to deal for Morgan Rielly. So that's kind of my take on that from a Rielly perspective. The Chicago trade, however,